Picture this. Sophie, 29, standing alone on a windswept Oregon cliff, tears blurring her view of the crashing Pacific waves, branded the villain of her family's dream vacation. All she did was fight for her mother's life while her sister, Harper, danced through chaos, oblivious to the storm she'd unleashed. The words, "You ruined everything," cut deeper than the coastal wind, hurled by Harper, whose charm had always eclipsed Sophie's quiet sacrifices. This wasn't just a vacation gone wrong. It was a reckoning, unearthing a family secret that threatened to shatter their fragile bonds. Would Sophie stand for her mother, tear them apart forever, or could it heal wounds buried for decades? Stick with the story, because the twist will pull you in, and the truth will leave you stunned. If you've ever felt unseen in your family, hit that like button, drop a comment with where you're from, and subscribe to hear how Sophie's fight changed everything. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. In the small town of Astoria, Oregon, Sophie Whitaker grew up as the steady heartbeat of her family, always in the shadow of her dazzling sister, Harper. Their parents, Clara and Everett, ran a cozy bookstore, but it was Harper's star that shone brightest. At 33, Harper could charm a room with a single smile. Her laughter filled their modest home, her swim team trophies lined the shelves, and her impromptu adventures had Everett wrapped around her finger. Sophie, meanwhile, was the one who kept things running, balancing the shop's books by 16, cooking dinners when Clara worked late, and earning a scholarship to study finance at Oregon State. Her 3.9 GPA, barely a nod from her parents. Harper's latest drama, or prom queen crown. A family celebration. It wasn't that Clara and Everett didn't love Sophie. They did, but she was the reliable one, expected to hold everything together without fanfare. As they grew older, the roles stuck like glue. Harper flitted through college, changing majors from art to journalism to theater, each shift funded by their parents, without a murmur. When she decided to explore her soul in Seattle for a year, Clara and Everett dipped into savings to make it happen. Sophie, on the other hand, worked nights at a cafe to pay for her degree, graduating early and landing a stable job at a Portland accounting firm. Her milestones earned quiet pats on the back, while Harper's were met with toasts and pride. Beneath Sophie's calm exterior, a quiet resentment simmered, not just for Harper's freedom, but for the unspoken family rule that Sophie's needs came last. 2 years ago, Clara's health took a sharp turn. Diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, she faced daily battles with medication, blood sugar checks, and fatigue. Sophie stepped up, researching diets, organizing pill schedules, and driving Clara to specialists in Portland. Harper, now a marketing assistant in Seattle, would call with breezy concern, but her questions about Clara's health quickly pivoted to her own dating escapades or work gossip. Sophie swallowed her frustration, but each call chipped away at her patience. Then one stormy evening, Sophie found a faded envelope tucked in Clara's old recipe book, a cryptic letter hinting at a family tragedy, mentioning a name she didn't recognize. Lila. Who was Lila, and why had Clara hidden this? The discovery planted a seed of unease, a mystery that would haunt Sophie as their family planned a getaway that promised peace but delivered chaos. The letter's shadow loomed as Sophie prepared for a vacation Harper had suggested, a week at a coastal cabin in Cannon Beach. It was meant to be a reset, a chance for Clara to rest and the family to reconnect. But as Sophie packed Clara's medications and researched nearby clinics, she couldn't shake the feeling that this trip would unravel more than just family tensions. The letter's words, "Lila's choice broke us," echoed in her mind, hinting at a secret that might explain Harper's reckless charm and the family's unbalanced dynamic. What truth was waiting in that cabin by the sea? The Oregon coast stretched endlessly before Sophie, its rugged cliffs and roaring waves whispering promises of peace, but the faded letter she'd found in her mother Clara's recipe book gnawed at her. "Lila's choice broke us." It read, a cryptic clue to a family secret that felt like a storm brewing just out of sight. At a tense family dinner in their Astoria bookstore, Harper, ever the spark of the Whitaker family, tossed out a dazzling idea, a week at a coastal cabin in Cannon Beach. "It'll be perfect," she said, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "Mom can rest, Dad can fish, and we'll all just be together." Clara, worn from her diabetes struggles, managed a rare smile, her hand squeezing Harper's across the table. Everett nodded, already dreaming of casting lines into the Pacific. Sophie, though, felt a knot in her stomach. Her accounting job in Portland was relentless, and Clara's health demanded careful planning, medications, dietary restrictions, nearby clinics. But seeing Clara's fleeting spark of hope, Sophie kept her doubts quiet, even as the letter's mystery pulsed in her mind. Who was Lila, and what had she done to break them? Harper's suggestion lit a fire of anticipation. Clara, who'd been battling fatigue and blood sugar spikes, seemed to come alive at the thought of salty air and family time. "I've been so cooped up," she admitted, her voice soft but eager. Everett, usually reserved, was all in, reminiscing about fishing trips from his youth. Sophie wanted to believe in the dream, a rare moment of unity for a family fractured by unspoken roles. But Harper's track record of flaking on promises loomed large. Sure enough, when Harper sent a link to the cabin rental and then vanished into her Seattle social whirl, the planning fell to Sophie. She spent late nights booking the cabin, mapping routes, and researching Cannon Beach's medical facilities, all while juggling her firm's year-end audits. Clara's diabetes meant every meal had to be calculated, every day structured to avoid emergencies. Sophie packed a meticulous medical kit, complete with a bright blue folder for Clara's medication schedule, her accountant's precision, a lifeline for her mother's health. The letter, though, was a splinter in her thoughts. Tucked in her suitcase, its words hinted at a past betrayal that might explain Harper's reckless charm or Clara's quiet sadness. Was Lila a sister, a cousin, or something else? Why had Clara hidden this for so long? Sophie's research into Cannon Beach turned up nothing about a Lila, but the coastal town's history of shipwrecks and lost families felt like an eerie echo of the letter's tone. As she finalized the vacation plans, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was about more than rest. It was a collision course with a truth the Whitakers had buried. Harper's enthusiasm for the cabin idea didn't extend to logistics. Days before departure, she called Sophie in a panic, admitting she'd forgotten to request vacation days. "Can you push the trip back a week?" she pleaded. Sophie's grip tightened on her phone. "Harper, everything's set. I've taken time off. Mom's doctor visits are scheduled around this. It's not just about you." Harper sighed dramatically, claiming she'd face her boss's wrath to make it work, framing it as a noble sacrifice. Sophie bit back her irritation, but the letter's shadow grew darker. Harper's selfishness felt like more than just her usual flair. Was it tied to whatever Lila had done? As Sophie packed Clara's insulin and emergency supplies, she slipped the letter into her bag, its mystery a quiet passenger on the journey ahead. The cabin promised sweeping ocean views and family healing, but Sophie sensed a storm, both literal and emotional, waiting on the horizon. Would this vacation mend their bonds, or would the secret of Lila tear them apart before they even reached the shore? The Oregon coast was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where the Whitaker family could stitch themselves back together under the endless sky and crashing waves. But as Sophie loaded Clara's carefully labeled insulin into a cooler, the mysterious letter she'd found, "Lila's choice broke us," whispered of secrets that could unravel everything. The family had agreed to leave Astoria at 7 a.m. sharp to beat the coastal traffic for their 6-hour drive to Cannon Beach. Sophie, ever the planner, had packed Clara's medical supplies, a blue folder with her medication schedule, and sugar-free snacks for the road. But as the clock ticked past 7:30, Harper was nowhere to be found. Everett checked his watch, his brow furrowing, while Clara sipped tea, her diabetes making her sensitive to the morning chill. Sophie's stomach churned, not just from Harper's delay, but from a discovery she'd made that morning, a faded photo tucked in Clara's medical bag, showing a young Clara with a girl who looked eerily like Harper, labeled with Lila, 1985. Was this the Lila from the letter? What was their connection? At 8:10, Everett called Harper, his voice tight. Her cheerful reply crackled through the phone. "Just finishing packing. Be there in 20. She lived 10 minutes away, yet breezed in at 8:45, clutching a latte and an oversized duffel, her sunglasses perched like a crown. "Sorry, guys, couldn't decide on outfits," she chirped, oblivious to Everett's sigh or Sophie's clenched jaw. Harper's bags forced Everett to repack the SUV, disrupting Sophie's meticulous arrangement. Clara smiled indulgently, but Sophie caught the fatigue in her mother's eyes. As they hit the road, Harper claimed the front seat, citing motion sickness, leaving Sophie to monitor Clara in the back. The coastal highway unfolded, misty forests giving way to glimpses of the Pacific, but Sophie's mind was on the photo. Who was this girl, and why had Clara kept her hidden? They stopped at a retro diner in Tillamook for lunch, its neon sign flickering against the gray sky. Sophie scanned the menu for Clara's dietary needs, suggesting a grilled salmon salad. Harper rolled her eyes. "Sophie, let Mom live a little. It's vacation." Clara, ever the peacemaker, chose the salad, but her hands trembled slightly as she checked her blood sugar. Harper, meanwhile, sent her burger back for being too well done, delaying them further. Sophie noticed Clara's pallor and quietly asked, "Did you take your noon meds?" Clara nodded, but admitted, "I'm just tired from the drive." Sophie's heart sank. Clara needed rest, not Harper's chaos. As they ate, Sophie slipped the photo from her bag, studying it under the table. The girl's smile mirrored Harper's, but there was a sadness in her eyes. Was she a sister? A cousin? The letter's words echoed. Broke us. What had happened in 1985? Back on the road, Harper chatted about her Seattle friends, her voice drowning out Everett's classic rock playlist. Sophie gazed at the ocean, her fingers tracing the photo's edges. The cabin came into view by late afternoon, a cedar masterpiece perched above the rocky shore, its windows catching the fading light. Clara gasped. It's breathtaking. Even Harper paused her phone, scrolling to marvel. This is unreal. For a moment, they stood together, the sea's rhythm promising a fresh start. But as Sophie unloaded the car, organizing Clara's medications on the kitchen counter, she found another clue, a scribbled note in the photo's margin. "Lila, don't forget me." Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a journey into a past her family had buried. Harper's laughter from the deck grated against Sophie's nerves. Would her sister's recklessness derail their chance at healing, or would the secret of Lila force them to confront the truth before the week was out? The Cannon Beach cabin glowed under the fading coastal sun, its promise of family healing now shadowed by the cryptic letter and photo Sophie had found, hinting at a mysterious Lila and a past that broke the Whitakers. As Sophie arranged Clara's insulin on the kitchen counter, her heart raced, not just from the weight of her mother's diabetes, but from the growing sense that this vacation was a ticking clock, counting down to a revelation. The family had planned a whale-watching tour for day 3, a gentle outing perfect for Clara's limited energy. But as dawn broke, storm clouds rolled in, and Harper was missing, along with the family's SUV and Clara's emergency insulin cooler. Sophie's stomach dropped. Clara's health hinged on that medication, and Harper's reckless absence was no mere inconvenience, it was a crisis. The letter's words, "Lila's choice broke us," echoed in Sophie's mind. Was Harper's behavior tied to this hidden past, or was she just being her usual, selfish self? Sophie tried Harper's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Everett paced the deck, his fishing plans abandoned, while Clara sat pale and anxious, insisting, "I'm fine for now, I took my morning dose." But Sophie knew better. A blood sugar spike without backup insulin could be dangerous. The whale-watching tour was in 2 hours, and the marina was too far to walk, especially with a storm brewing. Sophie's mind raced to the letter and photo, Lila's face, so like Harper's, and that haunting note, "Don't forget me." Had Harper found something too? Was her disappearance deliberate, a rebellion against a family secret she'd uncovered? Sophie pushed the thought aside, focusing on Clara. "We need to get to town," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "There's a pharmacy in Cannon Beach." With no car, Sophie called a local water taxi, the only option as rain began to lash the coast. The driver, a grizzled fisherman named Cal, navigated choppy waters, his boat pitching against the waves. Sophie clutched Clara's hand, the letter burning a hole in her pocket. At the pharmacy, Sophie explained the emergency, showing Clara's medical records on her phone. The pharmacist, a kind woman named Ruth, managed a partial insulin supply, enough to last the week, but at a steep cost without insurance. Sophie paid without hesitation, her mind flashing to Harper's carefree laughter the night before. As Cal ferried them back through the storm, lightning cracked the sky, and Sophie's thoughts darkened. What if Harper's absence wasn't just thoughtlessness? What if the letter's secret was driving her actions? Back at the cabin by 3 p.m., the SUV was still gone. Everett's calls to Harper went unanswered, and Clara's fatigue deepened from the stressful outing. Sophie set up Clara's new insulin, her hands trembling with anger and worry. Then, at 4:30 p.m., tires crunched on the gravel drive. Harper sauntered in, wind-blown and grinning, carrying bags from a local boutique. "Found the cutest shop in town," she chirped, oblivious to Everett's scowl. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Harper blinked. "My phone died. I was just exploring." Sophie's restraint snapped. "You took the car with Mom's insulin, Harper." "We missed the whale tour. Had to take a boat through a storm to get meds." "Do you even care?" Harper's smile faltered, but she deflected. "I didn't know the insulin was in there." "Chill, Sophie, Mom's fine." Clara's quiet voice cut through. "I wasn't fine, honey. I needed that medication." For a moment, Harper looked guilty, but then she held up a scarf. "I got this for you, Mom." Sophie's blood boiled. The letters mystery loomed. Lila's betrayal, Harper's recklessness. Were they connected? As the storm raged outside, Sophie knew this wasn't just about a car or insulin. Something deeper was tearing at their family, and Harper's next move might force the truth into the open, for better or worse. The Oregon coast's restless waves mirrored the storm brewing in Sophie's heart as she unpacked picnic supplies in the Cannon Beach cabin. The weight of the mysterious letter, "Lila's choice broke us," and the photo of a young Clara with a Harper look-alike pressing harder with each passing day. Harper's reckless car theft and the missing insulin had already frayed the family's fragile unity, and now Sophie clung to the hope of a simple picnic to restore some peace for Clara, whose diabetes demanded calm. She'd spent the morning preparing a spread tailored to Clara's needs: turkey sandwiches on whole grain bread, fresh berries, and a low-sodium quinoa salad, every detail calculated to keep her mother stable. But as Sophie arranged the picnic table by a secluded cove, the salty breeze carrying the promise of a perfect day, Harper's voice shattered the calm. "Hope it's cool. I invited some friends," she called, waving toward a boat approaching the nearby dock. Sophie's heart sank. Not again. The letter's shadow loomed. Could Harper's impulsiveness be tied to this hidden past? 3 locals: Finn, a lanky surfer; Wade, a tattooed boat mechanic; and his sister Nora, a free-spirited artist, climbed ashore, their laughter loud and their cooler clinking with beers. Harper introduced them with a grin, as if their presence was a gift to the family. Everett, ever indulgent, welcomed the craft beer Finn offered, while Clara smiled politely but tightly. Sophie recalculated the food, barely enough for 3 extras, and gritted her teeth as Harper's friends sprawled across the picnic area, their boisterousness drowning out the cove's serenity. Finn, spotting Clara's restraint with the food, leaned in. "On some kind of diet?" "Harper said you've got health stuff." Clara's face flushed. "Just managing diabetes," she murmured. Finn pressed on, oblivious. "My aunt tried this herbal tea thing. Totally fixed her blood sugar. I can hook you up." Sophie's protective instincts flared. The stranger had no business offering medical advice. The picnic spiraled further when Wade and Finn started tossing a football, their drunken throws growing wilder. A stray toss smashed into the table, toppling Clara's water and scattering sandwiches into the sand. "Oops!" Wade laughed, making no move to help. Sophie scrambled to salvage what she could, noticing Clara's hands trembling as she checked her blood sugar, too low, likely from the stress. "Mom, you need to eat something solid," Sophie urged, handing her a spared sandwich. Harper rolled her eyes. "Sophie, relax. It's just a picnic." But Nora, more observant, frowned. "Your mom doesn't look great. Maybe we should chill." Finn waved her off. "She's fine. Just toss her some fruit or something." Sophie's patience snapped. She stood, voice firm. "We're packing up. Mom needs rest." Harper groaned. "You're so dramatic." "Mom, tell her you're okay." Clara hesitated, then admitted. "I'm not feeling well, honey." The admission silenced Harper briefly, but Finn interjected. "Why don't we take this party to your cabin? Got more beer on the boat." Harper's eyes lit up. "Great idea." Sophie's blood ran cold. The letter flashed in her mind. Lila's betrayal, Harper's recklessness. Were they linked? Had Harper found the letter too, and was she running from its truth? "No," Sophie said sharply. "This is a family vacation. "You're not bringing strangers to our cabin." Harper scoffed, but Clara nodded. "Sophie's right. I need quiet." As they packed up, Sophie slipped the letter from her pocket, noticing a new detail, a faded postmark from Cannon Beach, dated 1985. Her pulse quickened. This town held the key to Lila's story, and Harper's careless invitation of outsiders felt like a deliberate distraction. Back at the cabin, Sophie resolved to confront her sister, but the roar of Finn's boat returning hinted that Harper wasn't done stirring chaos. What secret was she hiding, and would it break the family before Sophie could uncover the truth? The Cannon Beach cabin, once a beacon of hope for family healing, now felt like a pressure cooker as Sophie stood on the deck, the ocean's roar drowned out by the echo of Harper's latest betrayal, inviting her rowdy friends back despite Clara's need for rest. The mysterious letter Sophie had found, with its haunting words, "Lila's choice broke us," and the photo of a young Clara with a Harper look-alike labeled Lila, 1985, burned in her mind. Was Harper's reckless behavior a rebellion against this hidden past, or simply her lifelong selfishness? The picnic disaster had pushed Sophie to her limit, and now, as Finn, Wade, and Nora's laughter carried from the dock, she knew a confrontation was inevitable. Clara's health was at stake, and the letter's secret felt closer than ever to unraveling, like a wave about to crash. Inside, Clara rested on the couch, her face pale from the picnic's stress, her blood sugar still unsteady. Sophie had just checked her levels, stable but precarious, when Harper burst in, Finn trailing her with a speaker blaring rock music. "We're just chilling on the deck," Harper said, tossing her hair. "No big deal." Sophie's voice was steel. "Mom needs quiet, Harper. Your friends need to leave." Harper rolled her eyes, her friends snickering behind her. "God!" "Sophie, stop acting like you run this place." Everett, usually quick to smooth things over, looked torn, his eyes flicking to Clara's tired form. Sophie's patience, worn thin by years of being the responsible one, snapped like a frayed rope. "Harper, this isn't about me," Sophie said, her voice rising but controlled. "It's about Mom. Her health is fragile, and you've done nothing but make this trip harder. You stole the car with her insulin, invited strangers who disrespected her condition, and now you're bringing them here when she needs rest. Do you even care?" Harper's face flushed, but she deflected. "You're so controlling, Sophie. Mom's fine. You're just using her health to boss everyone around." Clara's quiet voice cut through like a lighthouse beam. "I'm not fine, Harper. I haven't been fine. This vacation was supposed to help me, but I'm exhausted from all the chaos." The room stilled. Harper's bravado faltered, her eyes darting to Clara. Sophie seized the moment, years of buried resentment spilling out. "4 years. I've carried this family while you've skated by. When you crashed Dad's car at 17, I covered for you. When you racked up debt in college, Mom and Dad bailed you out. I've been at every hospital visit for Mom, while you send texts and disappear. I'm done cleaning up your messes." Harper's eyes welled up, a familiar tactic, but Sophie pressed on. "This isn't just about you, Harper. It's about Mom, Dad, me, us. You don't get to keep acting like the world revolves around you." Everett stepped forward, his voice heavy. "Sophie's right, Harper. We've let you slide too long." Harper gasped, betrayed. "So you're all against me now?" Then Sophie pulled the letter from her pocket, her voice trembling. "And what about this, Harper? Lila's choice broke us. I found it in Mom's things, with a photo of her and someone who looks like you. What do you know about Lila?" Clara's face went white, and Harper froze, her eyes wide with something. Guilt? Recognition? "You had no right to dig into that," Harper whispered, but her voice shook. Clara stood, unsteady but firm. "Enough. Lila was my sister. She left us long ago. It's not Harper's fault, Sophie, but she's right to be angry. I've hidden too much, and it's hurt us all." The revelation hung like sea mist, heavy and obscuring. Finn's music still blared outside, but inside, the family stood at a crossroads. Harper's friends were a distraction, but Lila's shadow was the real storm. Sophie's confrontation had cracked open the truth. Would it heal them, or would Harper's next move plunge them deeper into chaos? The Cannon Beach cabin, once a dream of family unity, now felt like a ship battered by the storm of Sophie's confrontation with Harper, the revelation of Lila, a long-lost sister, casting a shadow as dark as the Oregon clouds outside. Clara's admission that Lila's departure had broken them left Sophie reeling, the letter and photo now burning truths she couldn't unsee. Harper's reckless behavior, stealing the car, inviting disruptive strangers, had pushed Sophie to her breaking point, and Clara's fragile health was the final straw. As Harper stormed out to join her friends on their boat, her parting words, "I know when I'm not wanted," echoed like a slap. Sophie stood in the silent cabin, Clara's tired eyes and Everett's slumped shoulders reflecting the cost of years of unbalanced family roles. The letter's mystery pulsed. Lila's story wasn't over, and Sophie sensed it held the key to Harper's chaos. But she couldn't stay in this toxic spiral any longer. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Sophie announced, her voice calm but resolute. Clara's face crumpled. "Please, Sophie, we need you." Those words, once enough to keep her tethered, now fueled her decision. "That's the problem, Mom. Everyone needs me, but no one sees me. I'm exhausted from carrying this family while Harper does whatever she wants." Everett looked pained, but Sophie continued, "I'll come back to drive you home if you need, but I need space." Harper's absence left a void, but Sophie felt a flicker of relief. She was choosing herself, maybe for the first time. That night, she packed her bags, the letter tucked safely inside, its Cannon Beach postmark nagging at her. Had Lila run away here? Was Harper chasing the same escape? Sophie drove 20 miles to a quiet and overlooking Haystack Rock, its weathered sign promising solitude. Checking in, she felt the weight of the past week lift, replaced by a flood of emotions, grief for the vacation that wasn't, anger at Harper's selfishness, and curiosity about Lila's story. In her room, she spread the letter and photo on the bed, noticing a new detail, a phone number scrawled on the letter's back, faded but legible, with a Cannon Beach area code. Her pulse raced. Could Lila still be here? Sophie hesitated, then dialed. It rang, then cut to a generic voicemail. She left no message, but the possibility of answers kept her awake, the ocean's rhythm outside her window both soothing and restless. The next morning, Sophie hiked a nearby trail, the salty air clearing her mind. Alone, she felt a freedom she hadn't known in years. No schedules, no crises, just her own pace. But that evening, her phone rang, Clara's number. "Sophie," Clara's voice was shaky. "I had a blood sugar scare today. I'm okay now, but it was bad." Sophie's heart lurched. "What happened? Did you eat? Where's Dad?" Clara sighed. "Everett got me juice and crackers, and I stabilized. Harper's still with her friends. She doesn't know. I just needed to hear you." The call stirred Sophie's protective instincts, but also her resolve. Clara added, "Everett took me to a doctor today. He stepped up, Sophie, after you left." The news was a faint spark of hope. Her departure had forced change. But Harper's absence during Clara's crisis reignited Sophie's anger. Was Harper running from Lila's truth, just as Lila had run from the family? Sophie sat on the inn's balcony, the letter in her hands. The phone number stared back, a lifeline to answers. Should she try again, or return to the cabin? Clara's health scare tipped the scales. She needed to go back, not just for Clara, but to face the secret that was unraveling them. As she packed to return, the ocean roared, and Sophie knew the truth about Lila was waiting. Would it heal her family, or would Harper's next reckless move bury it forever? The Oregon coast's relentless waves seemed to whisper answers. As Sophie drove back to the Cannon Beach cabin, the mysterious letter and its secrets about Lila, a sister who'd broken the Whitaker family, clutched in her bag. Clara's recent blood sugar scare, handled by Everett in Sophie's absence, had pulled her back from the solitude of the inn, but Harper's continued absence stung. The letter's faded phone number and Cannon Beach postmark hinted that Lila's story was tied to this very town, and Sophie sensed Harper's reckless behavior might be more than selfishness, perhaps a desperate flight from a truth she'd glimpsed. As Sophie pulled into the cabin's driveway, only Everett's SUV greeted her, Harper's rental car still missing. The ocean's roar felt like a warning. This final day could mend their family or break it forever. Inside, Everett answered the door, surprise softening his weathered face. "Sophie, you're back." Clara, resting in the bedroom, lit up when Sophie appeared. "I was so worried," Sophie said, taking her mother's hand. I'm better now, Clara assured her, thanks to your father. Everett had taken Clara to the local clinic Sophie had researched, a small victory that showed he'd stepped up. But Harper's absence hung heavy. She texted, Everett said, hesitating. She's staying with that Nora girl. Didn't mention you, Clara. Sophie's jaw tightened. Harper hadn't even checked on her mother's health crisis. Was she avoiding the family, or had she found something about Lila that kept her away? Sophie settled Clara with a cup of tea, then pulled out the letter, showing it to Clara. Mom, tell me about Lila. Why did she leave? Clara's eyes filled with tears. Lila was my older sister, she said softly. She ran away in 1985 after a fight with our parents. She was troubled, like Harper can be. I never told you girls because it hurt too much. I thought I'd failed her. The confession hit Sophie like a wave. Harper's recklessness mirrored Lila's, but was it inherited pain or coincidence? Everett joined them, his face heavy with guilt. I pushed Clara to keep it quiet, he admitted. I thought it'd protect you both, but it only hurt us more. As evening fell, Harper's rental car crunched into the driveway. She entered, subdued, her eyes widening at Sophie's presence. You're back, she said, then noticed Clara's frail form. Mom had a health scare, Sophie said, her tone sharp but steady. You weren't here. Harper paled, her usual defiance gone. Why didn't anyone tell me? She whispered. Would you have come back? Sophie asked. Harper hesitated, then sat beside Clara, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. Clara squeezed her hand. You're here now. Later, on the deck, Harper approached Sophie, the ocean's rhythm a quiet backdrop. I found something, Harper admitted, pulling out a crumpled postcard from Cannon Beach, dated 1986, addressed to Clara from Lila. I saw it in Mom's bag days ago. It said she was sorry, but she couldn't come back. I felt like her, running from everything. Sophie's heart softened. You're not Lila, Harper. But you've got to stop running from us. Harper nodded, tears falling. I've been jealous of you, Sophie. You're so together, always there for Mom. I don't know how to be that person. Sophie sighed. I'm not perfect. I'm just trying like you can. The sisters talked late into the night, unraveling years of resentment. Harper admitted her fear of failing the family, while Sophie confessed her exhaustion from carrying it. Lila's story, a sister lost to her own demons, explained Clara's leniency with Harper, but it didn't excuse it. By the final morning, Harper joined them for breakfast, helping Clara with her meds, a small but real change. Everett, too, checked with Sophie about Clara's needs, a shift from his usual deference to Harper. As they packed to leave, the letter's truth had set them free, not to forget Lila, but to learn from her absence. Would this fragile peace hold, or would the ghosts of the past resurface? The Cannon Beach cabin faded into the rearview mirror as the Whitaker family drove back to Astoria, the Oregon coast's misty horizon, carrying a quiet promise of renewal. Sophie, behind the wheel, glanced at Clara, whose steady breathing signaled stability after a week of health scares and emotional storms. Harper, in the back with Everett, was uncharacteristically quiet, her fingers tracing the edge of Lila's postcard, the final piece of the family's buried past. The revelation of Lila, Clara's lost sister, whose flight from home in 1985 had left scars, had cracked open the Whitakers' unspoken roles. Sophie as the burdened caretaker, Harper as the indulged free spirit, and Clara and Everett as parents caught in guilt and avoidance. Yet, from the wreckage of their chaotic vacation, a fragile hope had emerged. Harper's apology, her small steps to help Clara, and Everett's newfound attentiveness were seeds of change, planted in the wake of Sophie's brave stand. Back home, the family dynamic began to shift. Sophie set boundaries, insisting on shared responsibilities for Clara's care. Harper, humbled by the weight of Lila's story and her own absence during Clara's health scare, started checking in, even helping with meal prep for Clara's diet. Everett, no longer defaulting to Harper's charm, consulted Sophie on decisions, his pride in her quiet strength now vocal. Clara, unburdened by the secret of Lila, seemed lighter, her smiles more frequent. The letter and postcard, now tucked in a family album, were no longer ghosts but reminders of lessons learned. that love requires accountability, and silence can wound as deeply as words. Sophie, once invisible, felt seen, not as the responsible one, but as a daughter with her own dreams. The vacation, though far from perfect, had been a crucible, forging a stronger family from its trials. This story isn't just about the Whitakers. It's about the courage to face family truths, to set boundaries, and to rebuild. If their journey resonates, think about your own family. Have you ever had to stand up, even when it hurt? Drop a comment below with your story. I read everyone. Hit that like button if this moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more heartfelt tales of growth and healing. Let's keep these conversations alive, because sometimes the hardest moments lead to the greatest change.